One of the challenges we've always had, no matter how wonderful we thought SharePoint was the ability to work with content that was stored in SharePoint if we were ever disconnected. I know it's hard to believe, but these days there are times when we're not connected to a network. It could be in network challenged areas, sometimes where networks come and go or are up or down and not really reliable. Or it could be because we fly on airplanes or stay in hotels or otherwise are just disconnected. Well, there have been a couple of solutions that have been put out for a couple of versions of SharePoint, but they're no longer around. You may have heard about Microsoft Groove, or more recently, Microsoft Workspaces. Well, these were the predecessor of something called SkyDrive Pro. Before we go any further, I have to clarify that SkyDrive Pro and SkyDrive are two different things. SkyDrive is a personal information storage space that you can get for free from Microsoft. It's designed for individuals. I know a lot of students who use it because they need to be able to access files no matter where they are or what computer they're on, whether it's at home, on their laptop, or even at school. So there are some really good uses for individuals to use SkyDrive, and that's what that service is. SkyDrive Pro is new with Office and SharePoint 2013. It's designed for organizations. It's part of SharePoint, and it utilizes the same interface as SharePoint. As part of the installation of SharePoint and Office and everything else that your IT people are probably doing, each person also gets a SkyDrive Pro account that comes installed, so it probably just shows up and you don't think anything about it. By the way, if you're an Office 365 subscriber, you also get your SkyDrive Pro account with that. Well, we need to go through several of the different features to show you how this works and why you might want to use it. First of all, we know that keeping things in SharePoint has a lot of advantages, and of course we want to do that. But what if we need to have that offline capability? Or what if we want to share with somebody who isn't allowed into SharePoint? Well, that's when SkyDrive Pro becomes an asset. First of all, from any library that you have, you can sync that content to your SkyDrive with one click. You need to notice that on the upper right-hand corner of your screen, just below your name, there's an option that says Sync. This is for syncing to SkyDrive Pro. The first time you do it, you'll go ahead and give it a click. You'll get a message that says you're about to sync the library. In this case, it's shared documents from the You Got It training. And it says you'll find these documents under Favorites in Windows Explorer. This goes back to linking content, just like linking any other kind of library, where it's going to be added to a special folder under your profile, under the Users folder on your hard drive. But they make it easy to find because it's part of Explorer. You also have the option to change that location if for some reason you don't like it. We do like it. We're going to leave it as the default, and we'll just say Sync Now. Now, of course, depending on how much content there is, it may take a while. This is telling us that it's ready to sync, and it shouldn't take too long, and you can go on and do other things while it's doing that. Again, they try to give you a lot of information about where you can find the content as it's syncing. We're actually going to just minimize this for a minute because I want to show you a different way. You do not have to sync just to find your SkyDrive. Also at the top of your screen is the SharePoint toolbar. This is what gives you access to the different elements or components of SharePoint, especially if you're using the Office 365 features. One of the options near the right-hand side is the SkyDrive itself. And if you give that a click or a tap, it'll take you to your personal SkyDrive. Now, I want you to look carefully at this screen because it's an awful lot like SharePoint. Mine says Office 365 because we're running this particular demonstration through a subscription account. But at the top, we have the same ribbon with Browse, Files, and Library, just like you've seen everywhere else. One thing that's important to note is that free SkyDrive account we were talking about that's just regular SkyDrive, that's really just a set of folders. But remember, we also said that SkyDrive Pro is part of SharePoint. And what you see here is not a set of folders. It's not a location. It's actually a library. Therefore, you have all of the same features that you're used to working with regular SharePoint libraries. That means it should be comfortable. Now, it does tell you where you are, that you're currently in Documents. It has similar activities that you can do, like adding new documents, dragging files here. On the left-hand side, it shows you the default organization. That there is a folder called My Documents. There's also one for Followed Documents. So if you're using SharePoint's following capabilities, those documents can be tracked. You can also see documents that have been shared with you by other people, using SkyDrive Pro. And then, of course, there are some recent documents listed down at the bottom. In the main part of the screen, we see that this is just a library and it has a variety of content. But notice there's a folder called Shared with Everyone. By default, anything that you put into your SkyDrive Pro library is private. Only you can see it, unless it's placed into the Shared with Everyone folder. And then, of course, it's shared with everyone. But everyone in this case means everyone in your organization. It's not available publicly. We can see over to the right, the sharing icon. If you see the two little heads, it's shared. If you see the lock, it means it's just for you. You can work with these documents in a familiar way as well. They have an open menu, for example. So let's see, we have a worksheet that we can open. We'll click on the open menu. We get to see the preview. There's a URL we can share. We can edit it. We can share it. We can follow it. Or we can go to the open menu for more options. Let's start by sharing this file. Remember that by default, right now, it's private because it's not in my Shared with Everyone folder. What we need to do is simply add email addresses or names. Now, this is one of the great benefits that you see, first off, with SkyDrive Pro. When I keep content in SharePoint itself, only people usually in my organization can access it. Here we can do kind of a mix and match. If you want to add someone in your organization, just start typing their name like you would in any one of SharePoint's fields. If Michael wants to share it with Aaron, you start typing Aaron's name, select the name, and that's it. If you wanted to share it with somebody who was not in your organization, you simply need to give a complete email address. Also notice on the right-hand side, you can designate if they can or can't edit. Basically, they can either view it or they can edit it. Once you get the names in place, then you can include a personal message, which I usually recommend you do. Tell people what it is you're sharing and why. And then there's an interesting check mark at the bottom. You need to be very careful with this. Requiring sign-in makes sense if people are within your organization. So in this case, for Erin, requiring sign-in is fine because she has to be signed into SharePoint anyway. However, Susan Jenkins is not part of this organization. And if this box is left checked, one of two things has to happen. Either Susan Jenkins needs to be given a sign-on on this network, or she has to have a Microsoft account. If she doesn't have a Microsoft account, she will be prompted when she tries to log in, and it's free, so that may or may not be a big deal. But if you don't want to force people to have or use those accounts, simply take this check mark off. Now, of course, these people don't have to sign in, and that can create problems, but this is limited to only the people you've invited, so maybe not a big concern. Once you get this set up the way that you want, simply click or tap Share, and they will receive an email with the message that you have and a link telling them how to get to this particular file. By the way, that invitation to come look at your document will expire for them after 7 days. So if they don't respond and use it within 7 days, you'll need to share it with them again. Maybe a little inconvenient for you, but other than that, it's not really a big deal. Just make sure that they know that so that they don't wait too long and have to regenerate the message. Another limitation, or at least I should say another factor, is technically you can only share about 20,000 files or so. That number may change as technology changes, and I don't think for most of us, 20,000 files is going to be a limitation. Most of us don't use that many files on a regular basis. But that is how we synchronize a library. It's also how we get into our SkyDrive, kind of how we navigate around in what's here, and how we work with documents, including sharing them with people. But now comes a big question: how do we actually use it? Let's tackle that topic in part 2 of this video.